song in the Farrelly family. I don't know about the sound, but the music does anyway, because this is Doreen's son, Cian Farrelly. I don't know whether he sings or not, but he's going to play a few tunes on the flute for you. He won't go too far straight now because Myra will keep him in order.
I'm going to start with 2 jigs. The first jig off John Carty, I don't know the name for it now, but the second jig I got off Angelina Carberry. So I'm keeping with the whole banjo feel there, but I'm playing the flute. So the second tune is called Happy to Meet and Sorry to Part, and it's a Scottish version of it. So. Right, I'm going to continue now with another set. Be the last that I'll do. It's 2 tunes. The first tune is called Melting, and the second tune is called The Starry Plough, or Plough and Stars. So I've entitled it Melting the Plough. The first tune I got from Magella Barclay below Limerick when I was in college and University of Limerick. And it's an 11/8 tune, one of kind of these weird tunes. And the second tune I got from the playing of Robert Harvey, I think it was. So give these a go.
Okay, so there you had Keane, and so the music is living on in that family already. Now, we're going to change something completely different. We're going to have a recitation or two. And the man who's going to deliver them here, he has his hat on as well, he's going to talk through it. Liam Butler, you can go ahead.
You're enjoying it? Then open the head feed. I'm going to tell you a little story about when I was lassie. You know nothing up here in Milton about hills or anything like that. You have no hills. But we're in one big hill that goes up near the sky. And there's an old lassie lives about near the top of it. And one evening last December it was. Now, you know the sort of weather we had last December. She was above one night and she was sitting at the hard stone. She lived in a lovely little thatched house above near the top of the hill. And she was sitting back at the hard stone and she had a big fire on. And it was flying up the chimney. And she hadn't one for company. Her husband was dead for the last 50 years. She had no one, not a sound. All you could hear was the tick-tock of the clock above on the mantelpiece. Not a one for company, only that old black tomcat. The old black tomcat was laying in the ashes in front of the fire, and every now and again he'd turn over and he'd roast himself on the other side. But she had, and all she had for life was a old candle in the window and a little tilly lamp behind her. And the next thing, on the middle of the floor appeared a little fairy. And the little fairy had a little wand in her hand about that length. And she turned around to the old lady that was sitting on the armchair at the fire, and she said, "Good Mrs. Murphy," she says, "you've been a great woman all your life. You've been a very good person." She says, "You're coming near the end of your days now." She says, "I'm going to grant you a wish." "Oh, a wish?" She says, "In fact," she says, "I'll give you 2 wishes." So the old lady looked at her and she said, "Ah, listen," she says, "I don't want nothing," she says. "I have enough to eat, I have a good fire, and I have my old cat for company." She says, "No, I could want no more." "Come on," says the fairy, "think about it now." She says, "You'll never get another chance." Well, she said, "Maybe there is one little thing that I might want," she says. "You know, if I was a little girl that height growing up," she says, "I always wanted to be a princess." She says, "Could you turn me into a princess?" "Certainly," says the fairy. So the fairy got over her wand anyway, and she took it out like that, and she gave it a bit of a whoosh, like that. Sitting at the fire in the armchair was the loveliest looking princess ever you've seen in your life. She had the tiara in her head, she had the lovely gown, down to the slippers. "Now," she says, "for your second wish." "Oh no," says the old woman, "I could never want anything else. I have all I want now." "Come on," says the fairy, "come on," she says, "time is of the essence." She says, "I haven't long, I can't stay." But she says, "Maybe there is one other thing that I just might want." She says, and she looked up at the fairy and she says to her, she says, "I wonder," she says, "could you turn the tomcat into a prince?" You see? And the fairy looked at her, kind of crooked, and she says to her, "Certainly, I can do that," she says. You see? So the fairy took up her little wand again, and she gave it a bit of a whoosh, like that. And standing in the middle of the floor stood the finest looking prince you ever slapped an eye at. He had the dicky bow and the white shirt and the tuxedo and the shiny shoes and the whole, right down the whole group completely. He turned around and he went over and he approached the princess sitting on the armchair like that. And he put out his two hands and he just took her up off the armchair. He took her into the middle of the floor and he looked straight into her eyes and he said, I bet you're sorry now you had me neutered. Story now about the priest, the parish priest. Last November, real cold, horrid, frosty evening, and the wind was blowing outside of the church and it cut you in two. It was a Saturday afternoon, and the priest went in to hear confessions at 2:30. He didn't leave the confession box until 7:15. And all he had was 3 customers. During all that time, he was absolutely starving with the hunger. He was freezing with the cold. And he was dying to go home to the broken house, the far side of the road, and put his feet up and get a mug of tea. So at 7:15, he said there'll be no one else coming now. He said, so he come out with the confession box. He walked across the middle seat that brings it over to the middle aisle, and he walked right down the aisle down to the door. And just as he was going out the door, this lad busted in by him, pushed him one side and went on up the middle aisle. The priest watched him anyway. He went on up halfway, he took a right turn and he went straight over and into the confession box. There you are now, said the priest. Look at that. He says, I'm here all day, he says, and he only had 3 customers. And this fellow now wants an errand. He says, well, I want to go home. But he says, sure, what can I do? I better go up and hear what he has to say. So the priest brought him back up the lane and he ran over and into the confession box, into his own department, you see. And after a minute or two, he just slipped back the slide, you see. And there was a nice bit of a mesh between him and the lad on the far side. And it was complete dark, you see. So the priest listened for a minute anyway now, and he says, oh, he says he's probably getting his thoughts together, do you know. So he waited another minute anyway, and there was no sound on the far side of the grill. So the priest was getting a little bit anxious at this stage, and he gave a bit of a, you see. Nothing, no stir, nothing. And the priest didn't know what to do anyway, so he gave another bit of a, you see. Nothing. Oh, says the priest, what am I going to do, do you see? So all around it was a wooden partition, do you see. So the priest got his fixed, and he gave it a good big rat tap, you see, on the side of the panel. And the next thing, the voice come from the far side of the grill, and it said, you needn't be knocking. There's no paper in here either. You all right down there, mister? Now, I'm going to do a recitation for you. You know, tonight is star-studded here. We're very lucky to have such players and all sorts of singers and everything around us tonight. But I'm going to tell you a very sad story now. And it's all about set dancing. It's about a young lassie that was dragged in off the street to do a set dance in a competition. And her name is Mary Ann McGee. And I hope you like her. When the local Judges Committee, they needed one to dance in a set, they found that in the parish, that even one was hard to get. If it wasn't corns, it was ulcers, or rheumatics 1 or 2. Oh, the situation got so desperate that the one-legged one to do. So they got into a huddle and did finally agree. There was no one else they could enlist, only Mary Ann McGee. Now Mary Ann had lost her man in a traffic accident, and from the hell that he'd been through, it was straight up above he went. Mary Ann collected the insurance and got on with her life, determined that before too long that she'd be someone else's wife. So she took the invitation to dance the Newport set, and that in her newfound social circles, a brand new man she'd get. Oh, rehearsals in the village hall were held 5 nights a week. As Mary Ann kicked timber, oh, the sweat rolled from her brow and cheeks. She tried remembering all the moves, oh, her brow in consternation knit. You know, she might have been enthusiastic, but she wasn't very fit. But she carried on relentlessly, hard at practice night and day. Still having time and a watchful eye for the man that had come her way. Competition night arrived. Mary Ann stood in the wings, her body stiff with tension, and her nerves as tight as fiddle strings. She could see into the audience, and her heart did skip a beat when she spotted an old boyfriend down in the front row seat. But one crucial thing she didn't know, but was to learn later, that the man she knew long years ago was now the adjudicator. Her turn it came to go on stage. She marched out with the rest. Her ability to catch a man, she'd soon put to the test. The musicians started playing, and she braced herself to go, and hoped that in the judge's eyes, unnoticed she'd not go. But disaster clouds were lurking near as her partner swung her round. He swung her just a wee bit hard, and her 2 feet left the ground. Her size 6 shoes slipped from her foot and sailed into the air. At speed it headed towards the judge, as seated in his chair. A gasp of consternation from the audience arose as the spinning, speeding missile smacked him on the nose. While the blood was pumping down his face, Mary Ann was mortified as she came down to claim her shoe, or her face she tried to hide. And as she came back up on stage, you know, her mind was in a flap. But then, didn't things go from bad to worse when she felt the elastic snap? The cruel hand of fate had struck like some terrible disease, when what should have been around her waist was down around her knees. With her face the colour of beetroot, she rushed into the wings, ignoring pleas of, "Will you please come back?" No, she gathered up her things. She rushed out to the car park, the tears rolling down her face. She fumbled with the door lock, feeling tired, old, and weak. Oh, all her hopes were shattered now. She'd not show her face again. She'd not suffered the embarrassment, not alone the pain. So she started up her motor, and she set off like a rocket, with emigration on her mind, and her knickers in her pocket. Now, thank you very much. Thank you.
Liam Butler, and if you believe all that, well, you'll believe anything. Now, we're getting back to the music again, and this time we have a group of people here. We have the boss man himself, Mick Foster, who's somewhere he is. I know there's not much I can say about Mick Foster, that hasn't been said already. A man who has travelled the world a number of times over the years, himself and Tony Allen, known here, there and everywhere for both music and song. And we have a drummer here. Now, there's plenty of Cayley band drummers in the country, but there's not that many good Cayley band drummers. But this is one of the rare breed here behind me, Martin Murphy from Longford. And on the flute here we have Siobhan Ní Chonráin. Now, I mentioned Siobhan already, but I could spend the whole week talking about Siobhan and all her exploits and her successes and everything else. Siobhan, of course, is well known as a music teacher, a first-class music teacher. She has taught All Ireland champions. And down in County Limerick, I remember a group in Kyoll that won a few All Ireland championships under her direction. She was a member of the Templantine Cayley Band that won the Senior All Ireland Cayley Band Championship last year in Cavan. And she's also, well, what they call her, project officer or Chimerico in the Cortes head office. And all those concert tours that go to the United States and to Britain and to Ireland, she produces those concerts. And you'll have a sample of her production skills on, when is it, tomorrow night week, or Monday week? I think it is when they get the date. Yes, Monday week, 17th of October, the Tour of Ireland concert will be performing at Orris and Willen in Mullingar. And it starts at 8:30. And you'll see a sample of her production skills there. And now we couldn't let them out on their own because we had to have somewhere to keep manners on them. So Myra is going to take over again and keep them in order. So there we have Mick Foster, Siobhan Ní Chonráin, Martin Murphy and Myra Fraser.
forget Siobhan. As Paddy said, she was a member and kind of a head book cat in the Temple Landing Kelly band that won the All Ireland last year. So we're going to get her to do a couple of tunes on the flute and let an old man rest himself.
Right, Gurmina Machlis. It's a very unusual thing to do, you know, when you play with a band and you're used to playing tunes with them. So I'm going to do a very risky thing. I'm going to play 2 tunes that we were well known as back in Glenton as our signature tunes. They were the Glenton Slides. And I'm really only doing them because I have a superb piano player and drummer here alongside me. I wouldn't chance it alone otherwise. And thanks to you all, and very much to the generosity of people like Mick, Myra, Noel, and the people here in the Midlands. I have to say, I won't say I'll never go back to Glenton, but I'm kind of happy here all the same.
Thank you very much, thank you, Siobhan. We're going to finish off with a couple of reels, and as you know, this is a kind of a Frank Galligan Memorial concert that we run every year, and it just so happens that this year it happens to fall on Frank's birthday. The 7th of October was his birthday. He'd be 90 if he was still with us, and my Aunt Moll is down there, and she's from Moneygall and that country, and she's over there in that direction, and she'll be 91 tomorrow. So we'll do these couple of reels very especially for my Aunt Moll.
Right. Now we have a change of personnel this time. We still have Moira and Martin here. And they're going to be joined by Willie Cadna on banjo. And Willie is indeed a very well-known exponent of the banjo from where? Ballynahan area. And Paddy McGuire on accordion. And I'm sure you know who Paddy McGuire is. He's from Northallerton anyway. So give them a welcome.
Good evening, everyone. We're going to start off with a couple of hornpipes. Two Paddy's favourite here, the Cliff. We'll get to them later on. Paddy might know it. We're going to do a couple of reels this time. The hair's paw and the red-haired lass. Round of applause here on Myra on the piano. Thank you.
Yes, plenty of life and plenty of energy in that. And now, talk about even the good wines of the last minute. There wasn't a drop of bad wine the whole night. But we have a special drop for you now, sir. We're coming very close to the end. This young man, I remember some years ago hearing him at a concert in Mullahoran in County Cavan. He was about, I think he was about 10 years of age at the time. And it was my first time to come across him. And I thought, this fella is certainly going to go places. He was playing marvellous stuff even at that age. And he did go places. But it was a couple of years ago. He won the All-Ireland Senior Button Accordion Championship at Flagdown. He comes from County Fermanagh, and he's going to play a few tunes for you now. Will you welcome Darren Brescia?
Thank you very much, Paddy. Well, there's one thing tonight I definitely can say, and I mightn't be the best musician, but I definitely have the biggest car parked out in the car park. Now, we'll start off here now with a couple of reels here. And there's a man down the back there, he's a neighbour of my own, and I'm going to play them for him. His name is Sean Bohan. And the first tune is called The Great Lucy Campbell's, and the second one is a tune that I hadn't heard for years until Danny O'Mahony, a great box player from Kerry, brought out his debut CD there. And it's on a CD, so it kind of brought it back to life for me, so we'll give them a go. types, and I'm not a great man for names. And even first thing in the morning, they kind of forget me own at times. So I think the first one is The Quantity Fisherman, and the second one is Dan's Request, I think. If I'm wrong, forgive me, or Paddy Ryan will tell me, because he knows all the names of all the tunes, so I think that's it anyway. Now, that was the Bucks of Armore. There was a man down there earlier on asked me for it, so that's another good deed done for today. We're continuing with a few jigs. The first jig I learned when I only started playing, and it was from a man that used to kill in our house away years and years ago, and unfortunately he passed away, and his name was John Nolan. And he used to play this jig in our house, and I could never find a name for it, and I used to just call it John Nolan's jig. So we'll try that, and we'll go into the second jig. I learned from the playing of yeah, that man there, yeah. I forget, it's not top of my head, but sure, I can't think. I learned it anyway, so we'll give it a go. Thank you. Now, ladies and gentlemen, will you all put their hands together for a woman that has worked very, very, very hard all night, Myra. Thank you very much. And it's absolutely great to be down here and playing at such a great concert, and you're a great audience, and to Mick and all the gang that invited me down here tonight, and to Paddy Ryan that done a fine job all night as well. Thanks very much, guys. Thank you. A couple of reels. The first reel I learned from a box player from County Clare, Nuala Hare is her name. She played it at a Flowey years ago, and of course I was like, Daddy, tape that quick, tape that tune. So I'm going to play that tune now for you. And the second one, I have no name for it at all. So. There must be no bedtime in this part of the country at all. It was Paddy Ryan sent me out to get these out home. Right. This is just like a lucky bag. Whatever comes out here, sir. We'll try something, all right.
What did I tell you? Great energy, mighty music indeed. And now that brings us to the end, almost anyway. There's a few minutes more left. So we're going to get all the musicians we can find out here on the stage to finish off tonight. And if there's any musician down there that wishes to join us, you're welcome to do so. Get up here as quick as you can. Now, before we leave you, I just want to remind you once again that the local Coates branch, the Frank Gavigan branch, are unveiling a monument in tribute to the great concertina player William Mullaney. And that will take place on Sunday the 23rd of October at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And it will be at his birthplace, which is just across from the school. There will be lots of musicians there, including the great Noel Hayden, to provide plenty of musical entertainment, and refreshments will be served here in the community centre. And the CDs of William Mullaney will be available on the day. In fact, I saw one of them as a raffle prize there tonight, but they'll be available on the day as well. Now, also, don't forget the Tour Violin concerts, which will take place in Ars and Willen in Mullingar on Monday night, week 17th of October, starting at 8:30. And it's a ticket affair, if you like. And if you, any of you wants to get a ticket for it, at the modest price of €10. Tickets will be available on the door on your way out. Now, when we're getting all these people out here on the stage, a word of thanks to all the performers who took part tonight, music, singing, dancing, storytelling, provided a great night's entertainment. And of course, compliments to the Frank Gavigan branch for organising this concert, and the chairperson, Bonnie Gertie, who I believe put a lot of work into it. Now we have, who have we at all? Well, we still have Dan President, we have Willie Calder, we have Mick Foster, we have Paddy Maguire here, we have Sean Callahan, and we have that very talented Callahan family here as well. And who else have we got? Aaron Murphy's out the drums. So there's going to be a mass of music now to finish off. Oh, by the way, before we leave, I must say a special word of thanks to you, the audience. What a fantastic audience we had tonight. There was great comfort. There was great comfort in performing for you. And obviously you are good judges of music and song. People with impeccable musical taste, I must say. And I suppose that's not surprising coming from this area. As the late Paddy Fallon, who was a great comedian and in concert MC, used to say, it was a great honour for you to appear in front of us tonight. So we'll see now how to shoot. I think I might join in myself. If they let me. I don't know whether they let me yet, but I'll try it. And I don't know what's coming up.